We don't play all music, only good music. We're Damn Radio. We interrupt this incredibly awesome music to bring you some incredibly awesome political talk on Damn Radio.
That is correct, and I am Samuel Trapp, bringing some of that talk to you right here on Damn Radio from the Lake Ozark Real Estate of the Art Studio. Feel free to call in tonight should you feel the urge. 573-746-8020 is the number. There's been a lot of news going on. I appreciate my brother for coming in last night, chatting with me. I have plenty of information to go over. Some of it is leftover. How do you feel about leftover commentary from last night? Some people don't touch leftovers, you put them there in your fridge and then you end up looking at them the next day and say, those were pretty good yesterday, but today can't do it. And then you end up tossing them in a trash can. Please don't do that to me. This is really fresh material because we didn't even try any of it yesterday. So let's pay attention to that. And there's a little bit of exciting news. I don't know if this is exciting anybody else except me, but you know what? I don't really care. It's my show, so if I can be excited about something, I'm damn well gonna. Damn, get it? Damn Radio. And I had an article published, sent it in a couple weeks ago, was wondering when it would come out, and it has appeared in Russian in a good-sized media outlet, lots of TV, lots of video, and they have a web presence. So I have a article in Russian, and it's basically part of my deep dive that I did a week or two ago. I think I did that deep dive when I was still in Lithuania, I believe, maybe Belarus, but I think it was Lithuania a couple of weeks ago. But it was published today. It's out there, doing pretty well. I'm liking it, and so I'm very glad of that. A little bit exciting, and they have an English version somewhere, but I haven't figured out how to do it yet. And so the one I have is in Russian, and so I have a theory, and I have had a theory for quite some time, and it bleeds through into most everything that I say and do on this program from this studio. And I believe that international relations are sort of like personal relations. You don't get to... Well, you can do it if you want, and I know plenty of people that do, that just cut you off if there's one thing in life that they don't like about you. I know people like that. I have met people like that. I am surprised at people like that you have a wrong opinion, you have a wrong, I don't know what, you have a bad day. Now I'm not saying you shouldn't, or people shouldn't get rid of bad eggs in their life if it's a continue and a constant, but you don't just start right off the bat like, I disagree with you, you like, I don't know what, you agree with transgender ideology, you agree with, I don't know, abortion, pick some biggies that really bother people, and therefore I have nothing to do with you. And not to make it too personal, but I remember growing up, and I grew up as a Mormon kid, yeah, and we were in Utah living there, and we... when you're a kid, friends are everything. Having this friend, that friend, the other, and you have these friends. And there was a kid who lived down the street. And that kid, he wasn't a Mormon kid. He was a different kid. I don't know what religion. I didn't care. I mean, it didn't matter to me. He's a friend, and but he didn't believe the same things that we did, and his parents didn't believe the same things that we did. We never talked about it. We didn't care. We were running the streets and being little kids. That's what little kids did. And I remember. I just remember. Nothing bad, they didn't speak bad about anybody, but that was the point. You'd say, well, they're not Mormon. You'd get the whispered, like the Joe Biden treatment. Well, they're not Mormon. And, I was always going, and what difference does that make? Even when I was the littlest of kids going, okay, and I suppose it goes to the point of view that you don't want to be, improperly influenced by those who are not like you or whatever, or might have different ideas than you. Well, I have never been that way. And I am open, probably gullible, a lot of people would say, that you don't discriminate between this or that or the other thing, and that doesn't mean and I remember my brothers had a sign in the poster in their downstairs bedroom. My older brothers had a poster down in their room, and it says, just because you're not paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get you, and that is absolutely true, because people are out to get you whether you're paranoid or not, and you don't recognize it, and so perhaps if I was a little more discriminatory in the people I associated with, none of that nonsense would happen. Anyway, I'm babbling, and that isn't what I intended to babble about today. Today I want to tell you a little bit about my article. That article was the one having to do with different world order and infrastructure events that we cannot get off the ground here. It seemed to be kind of in keeping with what my brother and I were discussing last night, because last night's show, and if you want to listen to it, go out to internationalflavor.com and listen to last night's show. Download it. It's called Road to Nowhere is what it's called, and it's out there on internationalflavor.com, and it was a good show, and this is somewhat in keeping with that, because I talked about in this article a variety of infrastructure projects that just got nowhere, that the U.S. has no long-term plan. We don't have anything, and we really don't have a group of private individuals seeking to do something now. If you're a true Republican and a true capitalist, you sit there and say, well, that's not the government's responsibility. I'm not so positive it's not. It's that maybe it is. Maybe it's something on a national level. You know what I mean? And they're always passing that money out to the states. It disappears. There's no national drive, these things, like one of the things that I talk about and I list, which isn't a surprise, everybody knows it happens, are these things like the Keystone Pipeline and just shutting it down right in the middle of it because politics. I don't like it, and these people like the, spotted hoot owl, and this spotted hoot owl is more important than their billions of dollars that they already spent, and they already had permits, and everybody already went through this once before. But guess what? We changed our mind. Screw you, Donald Trump. Knife in the back, right? And you get rid of it. And I'm not saying it's only on the Democrat side. It's on all sides. And but nothing gets done. And you gotta, I talked about this too much last night, but it just seemed that this story came out, or my article was printed at the right time, especially with the topic of my brother and I last night, and so it went pretty well. But the bigger point that I wanted to talk about with not associating with other people or terminating relationships because of one characteristic, one flaw. Like I don't deal with those type of people, whatever it is that you don't, I can't abide a Mexican coming across the border, I can't abide an illegal alien, and all right, I get it. They are, have broke the law depending on the severity of how you look at that kind of thing. But let me ask you this. If you came upon them in a car accident in the road and you were on a lonely road and nobody's there, and you go and you see them and they're in a car and they've injured themselves and they need help, would you give them help or would you walk away because I don't deal with those kind of people? Well, I can tell you here and now that I would be one of the people to help. Well, I suppose that I could also be one of the people who ends up blowing up with the car because it's a booby trap and all of that. You could argue that that is, my fate in life. But, I'm an odds calculator. and the likelihood of someone just being injured in a car and being the guy to kill. Now, famous last words, of course. Now, next week, I'm going to find a person of South American origin on the side of the road and be captured and hauled off into slavery somewhere. But anyway, I say that same thing with respect to countries all the time. And so I see my article, even I'm a U.S. writer, I'm a patriot of the United States, I'm a former military person of the United States, and I believe in and hope for the best for the United States, but that doesn't mean that I condemn all other, well, not all other, that I condemn Russia just because that's the popular move to do. I don't do that. So I see my article as a door opener, not as a betrayal. And my article is basically suggesting, as I do suggest, that the world is changing. And I'm not alone. There was an article on that I saw quite recently, said, let's see if I can find it real quick, that said, the golden billion has lost its crown. And I believe it has to, I only read part of it, but the subtitle of that says, the global majority is rewriting the rules of diplomacy and the West monopoly on power is over. And it's interesting because it's similar to what I am saying here on this station on a fairly regular basis, that the days of one country domination, they may not be over yet. In fact, they might not be over for a while, but they're on the decline. And in keeping with that, I wanted to talk about something that is a little bit different. Have you ever heard of Intervision? Intervision is a festival of music, and it's a competition, and it's been going on for years in Europe, and I think they pick different places every year to have it. I'm not extremely well versed in it, but I know I've heard of it. Okay, and a lot of countries have participants that come to this international festival. Well, I remember when the Soviet Union was around that the West had one set of music festival competitions on a global scale, and the East had their competitions on the other side. And never the twain shall meet. And they didn't get together. And then I was like, how in the world are you a world champion in hockey if you can't play the hockey team from Russia? How are you the world champion of, I don't know what, chess, if you don't play chess? And chess, they changed that around. And then several things, ballet, it's like, how come they're allowed in some things and not allowed in others? Well, one of them was this Eurovision thing. And during that time, back when the Soviet Union was around, like I said, there was a separate festival of a similar nature on the Soviet side, in the Russian side. When the wall collapsed, all that basically went away, and the doors were open, and everything was people were allowed to share in cultural exchanges, allowed to share in music exchanges, and allowed to share in all these things, right? Sporting events, hockey games. I remember when the wall came down, all these Russian hockey players were ending up in the NHL. And they still are. Hockey players in Russia are great. Geez, snow's on the ground till freaking snow's on the ground from September to June, and so there's always snow, and they're always so they're all very good at. There's a lot of good hockey players. I shouldn't say they're all very good at it, but a lot of good hockey players, and I believe that the exchange of ideas, of music, of sporting events, of culture, of dance, you name it, it can only be positive, right? It's not a negative thing, and it may help foster some sort of understanding. You remember me telling you a couple of weeks ago about Ozzy Osbourne and the festival of music that they were putting on for a couple of nights in Moscow. They were honoring who? Ozzy Osbourne. Oh, in Russia? What? And these things, these exchanges in the music. I listen to a lot of Russian music. I got some I could play for you now, probably. In fact, I think Kukushka is right on the desktop, if I remember right. Yep, sure is. I think I will play it for you. It's one of my favorites, and it's a good song. Let's see, because I like the tunes by a guy named Victor Tsoi, and he's dead, but it cannot play the file. We don't support this type of file. Well, that's a bummer. So, guess we're not going to listen to that, friends and neighbors. But I was just going to play a tiny bit of it for you because it's a good song. And I listen to a lot of Russian music. And I think that championships should include all players that wish to participate and not just those that, how in the world are you going to have a championship hockey team without including the Soviet hockey team or the Russian hockey team? How's that gonna happen? So in keeping with that, there was an article that came out just there, and in fact it was a press conference. I'm on YouTube watching this press conference, and the press conference is with Sergey Lavrov, who's the Minister of Foreign Affairs, been doing it nearly 26 years, and there you go. He's been there for a while, and he has been pretty vocal about his thoughts on the whole, I don't know what, multipolar world. So basically what has happened is, and I'm listening to this Foreign Affairs Department briefing and discussion, and there's a lot of people in the room, so I'm thinking it's some kind of a pretty huge deal. And so basically what they were announcing was that they have something called Intervision, which is similar to Intervision, which is a deep dive, right? And Russia has revived because they've been excluded, they have revived their own Intervision Song Contest as a Moscow-hosted, internationally broadcast event. And it's positioned as the alternative to Eurovision, right? So you have Eurovision, and this one's called Intervision. Well, and it's got a foreign ministry backing and state media, patronage, people that are in. The official site lists the finale for this as September the 20th. So it's coming up here in just a couple of days. at Live Arena in Moscow. And Channel 1, Peter V. Canal is what it's called, carrying the broadcast and an international field. So I listened and dug a little deeper to this thing, to what he was saying. And basically, he had this dedicated news conference. I was thinking there might be different topics, and he was just starting with this. But he spoke for 45 minutes, close, on this, and then took questions afterward about this event and talking about it. And basically, this dedicated news conference, he was saying they were at the foreign ministry mansion. It's a big old mansion where the foreign ministry is housed, and they were spotlighting the significance, I guess, of the show, diplomatically, culturally, musically, etc. And he made some commentary like, this isn't one we are going to display our culture, and we don't want to be preached to like is common in the West. And then he made kind of a pointed reference to the Olympics last year and the Last Supper idiocy that was highly offensive. And most people quit watching the Olympics, the joke of the Olympics, the last time, which is unfair to all the participants that work and try so hard to get there. And first it was embarrassing because you exclude certain countries, or you won't let them wear the flag of their country because we hate those people. Well, that doesn't build bridges, that builds walls, and it's not right. And so the Sergey Lavrovs make a poke at this idiocy of this Last Supper transgender nonsense, which is all just an effort to shock people and to show that we are here, and this is art, That's not art. It's disgusting, and it's just wrong. What are you to subject, my grandchildren to sitting and watching this idiocy instead of watching something that for hundreds of years people have enjoyed, the Olympics and competitions between the two. And so Lavrov made that, he goes, we don't allow any of those things. This is not going to be a gay pride parade, basically. That's what he was saying. It's not going to be a transgender event that is taken over because every public forum, every single movie in the West, has to have a gay couple raising a child outside of a traditional marriage. It just must. And in other countries, they don't allow, like Russia, they don't allow that thing. And you can disagree with that if you like, but it's a different culture. And it doesn't mean you X out the entire culture. So Lavrov in this dedication says, we provide, and he again twisted it toward what? Multipolarity. He called it music as a bridge. He said it's diplomatically highly significant because this music as a bridge is a cultural platform that can gather countries together in spite of their political differences. Now remember, I say this frequently, that China and India have differences, but China and India work together for the common future. They work together, and working together means what? You will probably work together more. And by the way, your disagreements may become lesser, slighter, smaller. They may begin to disappear. They may be able to be worked. You got to start somewhere. We don't start. We go, no. Trump is starting, I say, again, the we part means the collective we of the idiots who've been running the country for the last 50 years. Trump's trying, and he's making mistakes. He's fallen flat a couple of times, and it's especially internationally. And I suppose I should give him the benefit of the doubt and say maybe I just don't get what his strategy is. Long as he gets it, okay. But it's hard to follow, and I'm not sure that he's doing the right thing. But Lavrov, for his part, is talking about these cultural platforms. They want to gather the states together, the countries, basically, despite these political differences that they have. Ministry of Foreign Affairs posted his English language remarks online. So if you want to go out and read them, please do. And you can get his question and answer summary online. I know it's out there, but I haven't downloaded it. I listened to him in Russian before I realized it was at the end that they said we're posting the answers to all the questions and all the answers to these questions online in English later at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs website. So if you want them, you can go out there. And they always have a good set of videos out there anyway, but they're rarely translated. And but I like watching Russian anyway because Lavrov is clean, and they, I don't clean speaking. I mean, he clear speaking, I suppose. So I suppose the interesting part for me is who's appearing. Who is showing up. So there's an artist in Russia called Shaman. And he has a song out there called Ya Ruski, and that song is a decent song, and it's kind of patriotic. And after the special military operation began, is when I believe that song came out. And there's there's several patriotic songs that came out afterward that are like our proud to be an American, and you got to figure out the country and Western that you're gonna listen to when that comes along. And they have the same sorts of some political songs, and he's got this Ya Ruski song, which means I am Russian song, and it's a good song. I mean, it's got a great beat. It's got, it's decent, and it's a smartly put together song. It's classic, and the Russians are, it was extremely popular. Now, like most music, they overplay it, and it gets to where it's going. But he's going to appear, and then there were a couple of other very good ones. There's a couple of female song artists in Russian that were also very patriotic at the same time, and doesn't look like either one of them are on the list. But guess who is on the list? And I meant to look this person up, but I don't know who it is yet, so I'm going to do that and find out if I can figure out what song, if any, in Moscow. Let's type and see if I can type. Oh, she's not an American. She is, well, let's see. Her name is, she's Australian born. I guess she does have a U.S. passport, but she is an Australian born singer named Vassie. And she is going to represent the U.S. at Intervision. So that's pretty brave, right? She's an Australian-born singer and will represent the U.S. at Russia's Intervision contest, which is Russia's answer to Eurovision contest. Blah, blah. I don't care about the contest. Who is she? I want to know who she is. Here she goes. Vasiliki Karagiorgas, known as Vassie, is an Australian singer, songwriter, record producer, and actress. First woman to win an Icon Award, which she won at the 2023 Electronic Dance Music Awards. There you have it. And so it's electronic music. Well, I like that. I'll find out who she is and maybe download some of her music because I like electronic music. It's quite nice, and I enjoy it. So, but she is appearing. And so you could argue that she's Putin's puppet. I suppose you could say, or Lavrov's puppet. Maybe she is Lavrov's puppet. She's a Russian. Maybe she's been taken over by Russian disinformation, right? Maybe she is, I don't know what. It can't be anything good, right? Because she's going to Russia and she's going to participate with those people. If you believe that, you're just wrong. It's going to she's doing what people do. They're spreading their music. Like I spread my words, through this radio program, through this radio station, and through my writings, which I send out to Russia in Russian. And perhaps it's a missionary sort of thing for me. Perhaps I'm sending out, why don't you, in other words, say, perhaps I'm trying to change the hearts and minds of people in Russia. Instead, people go, geez, that Putin's changed the heart and minds of Trap, or, he's a puppet, and it's stupid. It's wrong. People, and the same goes for this Vassy person. I haven't seen anything negative or positive. Looks like people aren't beating up on her too bad. There's been a couple about it, but what they are beating up upon in foreign circles, foreign circles, but not. I haven't seen many in the U.S. By foreign, I mean Europe. But the Europeans are beating up on this. Intervision is going, it looks like they had to go back to this Soviet era deal because we aren't letting them in. and I can't believe this artist is going to go over and represent the U.S. It's nonsense. And so the domestic favorite, of course, is this shaman kid who is, and he has other good music. I've heard some of his other stuff too. It's pretty good. And so there, but think of here's some other listed people. Brazil. Guy named Luciano Calazans. I don't know who these people are, so I don't think I'm going to tell you their names. So let's just go with the countries, right? Because it's a 3-hour event, and they have judges. And when speaking about it, you know what? Let's get to the participants first, and then I'll tell you what Lavrov was saying about judges and stuff like that. So far. And some of these are there's been a couple of changes in the last day or two, but the list as of earlier tonight was United States, Vassy, Russia, the shaman person, Brazil had somebody, China, Cuba, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Ethiopia, Kenya, India, Belarus, Serbia, Azerbaijan, and UAE. So there's a good number of BRICS countries in there. Again, the key, China, India, Russia, Brazil, they are there. And there's plenty of others, So you got the Global South is over there. And, importantly, there is a U.S. Act. I think that's a key for engagement and for making, things that are, these are good. The final date is September 20. It's, 3.5 hours. And what Lavrov was saying is that it's a jury of musical experts who are going to decide the results. This is not a televote. And it's not meaning this is not going to be virtue signaling. This is not going to be, if you're the gayest, you win. If you're the transgender, you win. If you can, that was the undertone of this press conference. And I said something to this, or similar to this, the other day it's hard for me to believe that in the United States, where I was born and where I grew up, that hope for a brighter future is somewhat available to me by listening to the words of people who speak the truth. That, for example, men are not women just because they decide they are women, okay? That you don't just snap your fingers, wave your little, I don't know what, magic wand and say, no, there you go, I'm a woman from now on. From now on, I want you all to call me Loretta. Oh, what do you want to be called Loretta for, Stan? It's my right as a man. All right, we'll fight for his right to be called Loretta. Oh, Stan, why do you want to be called Loretta? Because I want to have babies. Sorry, that's a little bit of Monty Python for you. Oh, what's the point of fighting for his right to have babies when he can't have babies? I love that show. That's funny. That is The Life of Brian, where Brian is born in the stable next to Jesus Christ, and the wise men come into his stable, give his mother all the frankincense, gold, and myrrh, and then a couple minutes later, they go back outside, and then they come back in, beat up his mother, take the gifts back, and go to the right stable and give them to Jesus. Now, that is serious sacrilege, but it's also Monty Python, and so it's a funny movie. Sorry to be distracted by that, but I won't fight for your right to have babies when you can't have babies. And I won't fight. I will fight, though, for your right to dress up however you choose. And if you want to call yourself a rabbit, please do. Just, stay out of the shopping malls in your rabbit fur, if you would please. So, let us continue on with this. The Western press, like Reuters, The Guardian, are saying this is a Kremlin-backed counter-Eurovision and stressing these traditional values, but only in their friendly states. It's retro. This is a retro geopolitical tool. And they only got 23 countries appearing, The U.S. says, they're highlighting the narrative tension. LGBT issues versus the Russian legal environment where that just isn't allowed. And the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Lavrov are selling it as culture first, a bridge between countries, and a wide range of countries are participating, and they don't have to worry about making sure that, transgenders are evident in their performances if they don't like to. And so the press conference, which was pretty long, he said the purpose of this was to be globally inclusive of a performance stage where we don't lecture participants on politics. We try to unite people across a political divide through music. Now, you could argue that, but you are lecturing me, that we don't accept these type of things. The diplomatic angle from the Russian side is foreign missions worked, they wanted to get this broad participation, and they have all these Asian, Middle Eastern, African, and Latin American partners, but nobody from Europe, right? And Lavrov was criticized and asked a couple of questions about that, and he said, I'm not endorsing this. I'm just saying it's available, and it's a cultural platform for people to get together and share music, share thoughts, and that's what it is. And so, but remember, the story over here is that Russia is isolated. Once again, they prove that they are not, and they are not isolated. And so, we can dislike a government's policy without erasing all cultural contact with them. What about the Bolshoi Ballet? What about everything else positive in Russian movie, theater, music, sports, all of that? If India and China can get rid of their disputes, set aside their differences to make money and create infrastructure, why can't the U.S. walk and chew gum at the same time? Oppose the war and send an artist to sing at Intervision. Oppose what's going on in Ukraine and work on an infrastructure project with China. It's. I don't understand why we can't. What do you call it? Compartmentalize. I just don't get it. So the U.S. act, the girl appearing on an Intervision stage, is actually a pretty freaking big deal. And it's a bigger deal than cynics want to allow you to think, oh, gee, she's a Putin puppet, just like everybody else, right? It's small proof, however small, that bridges can exist without permission slips from a politician. And this squares with what Lavrov says, right? The bridge, not boycotts philosophy is being validated by another platform that Washington doesn't control. And, I hate to bring it back to me and my article, but it's the same thing. My article's getting tons of reading over there. You know why? Because I'm an American. And that's absolutely true. Just like if a Russian, English-speaking Russian person over here is to say something, they might think that, he might know a little bit more. If a new Russian immigrant comes over here or somebody comes to visit and says, no, I love Russia. I'm going to go back, but I want to visit. I really want to visit and see the United States. I want to see it. I don't want to stay here. I love my country. I want to go, but I would love to see it. And I know a bunch of those people who go, oh, no, I don't want to live there in the U.S. I would love to see it, but I don't want to live there. My home is Russia. And I've talked to a lot of people that way. They're just like us. I don't want to live in Russia. I want to live in America. I certainly want to visit Russia, and I want to see the massive history that they have and all of that. So perhaps I lecture on that a little much, or dictate what beliefs ought to be and politics shouldn't be. But then again, it's worthy of speech. Russia isn't a club of one. Russia has BRICS. It's got the global South. There's a U.S. act in this thing. This is an audience, and there's going to be music from everywhere. It's going to be a jury, not a bunch of hashtags about. I'm sure they'll get them. The hashtags will come anyway, but it's not. Oh no, we have to vote for this person because they put on a woman's dress and bad mouth the Last Supper. It's that's how it works. There's going to be the narrative. They're already trying to yank it back and forth. The Western outlets call it all propaganda. Russia officials call it all dialogue and, discussions without discussions, basically. And, dialogue is more important, though, isn't it? And you can't say that this isn't dialogue, even if it's with music and not words, right? So I don't know. I'm going to try to figure out how to watch some of this. Before I get to my next little topic on this, I did want to go back to, I don't want to read the golden billion thing, but there's been some interesting stories, like a U.S. Navy commander has been jailed in a bribery case. And I don't know that this gotten a lot of play, but I remember this name. Retired Admiral Robert Burke has been sentenced to 6 years because he awarded a government contract to a firm in exchange for a cushy job. Retired U.S. Navy Admiral Burke has been sentenced to 6 years, slapped with a hefty fine for bribery, federal prosecutors announce. The 62-year-old was found guilty of awarding a government contract to a company in exchange for future employment. The 4-star admiral was once the second highest uniformed officer in the Navy and commanded its forces in Europe and Africa. In a statement on Tuesday, prosecutors said that in May, a jury found Burke guilty of bribery and conspiracy and several other related crimes. According to documents, he used his position to ensure that the company, identified in the media as Next Jump, was awarded a contract for providing workforce training to Navy personnel in 2021. A previous multi-million-dollar contract with the company had been terminated 2 years prior because it had been poorly received. It was revealed that Burke had privately met with Young-Chul Kim and Megan Messenger, the co-CEOs of the firm, who offered to provide him future employment with the company in exchange for his patronage. According to officials, the new $355,000 contract envisaged the provision of basically the same programming that had failed 2 years earlier. After he retired in 2022, the admiral started working at Next Jump at a starting yearly salary of $500,000 a year and a grant of $100,000 in stock options. U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, Janine Pirro, accused the commander of turning 4 stars into dollar signs and trading duty for a corporate payday. The admiral's attorney said they would appeal his conviction, describing his conduct as a tragic deviation from his well-established character at a time of intense professional and personal stress at the twilight of a demanding 40-year career. They also note that the $500,000 salary and stock options Next Jump had offered as compensation were substantially below what a retired 4-star admiral could command in the private sector, implying that the scheme made little sense. He's been found guilty, though, friends and neighbors, and that is unfortunate. It really is. And that I want to see people pay, for these sorts of things, and I despise this one hand washes the other. I give you a contract, you give me a job, when it's not your money that you're making this contract for, and you're supposed to be an honorable. And it doesn't, nowhere does it say, obviously he fought it thinking either they wouldn't find him guilty or he thought he didn't do it. But his attorneys, when they described his conduct, like I told you, they call it a tragic deviation from his well-established character. Well, it's still a deviation. And the sad part to me is that there are people who have done far worse and nothing will ever happen to them. Those things, oh, well, they don't even get, They don't even get charged, you know. I'm not saying that this guy shouldn't be charged and shouldn't have been convicted and shouldn't have been gone after. The fact is, somebody wanted to make a point. He pissed off somebody somewhere. I would love to think that it was just the crime that got him, but I don't believe that at all. This is political, and somebody took him down because everybody at that level is doing it. Is the way I think. And that's a terrible way to think, but that's what I think. The people at the top are all doing this. And they take their cushy government job and turn it into a cushy corporate job and have 2-3 retirements or triple retirements. And frankly, here's a guy who's going to pay for it, but you can't help but feel sorry for him when all of them are doing it. You know, but I suppose you got to catch some of them, and maybe it will make an example to the others. I hope they don't let him go off. There was another interesting article. It was pretty funny, and I can't help but share it. And excuse me, and I think JR might have earlier, and I'm sure he would have if he saw it. But headline reads, that's not what the headline reads. The headline really reads, Macron to attempt to prove in a U.S. court that his wife is a woman, according to the BBC. The French leader filed a defamation suit against U.S. right-wing commentator. So, again, that word, right-wing, there's a right-winger in a commentator, Candace Owens, for alleging Brigitte Macron was born a male. Well, if they do this, they do realize that this opens up the evidence stream. And so Candace, I've never watched this, you know, and then allegedly there's some pretty good evidence of it, but I only peripherally followed it and put it in there, but excuse me. So they intend to provide, Brigitte and Emmanuel Macron intend to provide the U.S. court with photographic and scientific evidence they claim will prove that the First Lady is a woman. The couple's lawyer told the BBC the materials will be submitted as part of a defamation suit filed by the Macrons against right-wing, there she goes again, right-wing commentator Candace Owens, who claims that Brigitte Macron was born a male. Tom Clare, who represents the Macrons in the case, told the BBC's Fame Under Fire podcast on Thursday that they wish to disprove the allegations both genetically and specifically. Owens' claims regarding Brigitte have been incredibly upsetting to the French president, said Clare. He noted that while the process of proving she is a woman before the court is in no way pleasurable, she is firmly resolved to do what it takes to set the record straight. The Macrons filed the lawsuit in July in Delaware, accusing the conservative YouTuber, who has millions of subscribers, of falsely claiming that Brigitte Macron was born male, that the couple are blood relatives, and that Emmanuel Macron is the product of a CIA mind control program. Owen's lawyers filed a countersuit, arguing the case should not have been filed in Delaware, citing high legal costs that the right-wing influencer would incur. Ooh, I might have to look into this lawsuit and see if I can download it. Speaking in July, the right-wing personality doubled down on her claims, saying she was fully prepared to take on this battle on behalf of the entire world. The rumors about Bridget date back to 2021 when a self-proclaimed spiritual medium, Amandine Roy, interviewed independent journalist Natasha Ray, who claimed that Bridget Macron was born a man named Jean-Michel Trogneau. The Macrons filed defamation lawsuit in France and initially won in 2024, only to have the ruling overturned on appeal in July of 2025 on freedom of expression grounds. 24 years his senior, France's First Lady met Macron when he was 15, when she was his literature teacher at school. They got married in 2007. Isn't that nice? 24 years his senior. Wow. Well, that's quite the story, isn't it? I wonder what is going to occur with that. And here's one that just pissed me off, by the way. Here we are, up in the odds, up in the ante. Here we go again. The U.S. will supply Ukraine with advanced drone swarm technology, according to the Financial Times. 33,000 AI-controlled UAVs under a Pentagon contract by the end of the year. It's a U.S.-German startup that develops UAVs, and it unveiled its Drone Swarm Strike engine, transforms individual drones into a single force through a software app that allows any compatible system to join the swarm. The new software has yet to be tested on the battlefield. Well, that's great. Hasn't been tested on the battlefield. Well, let's give it to Ukraine. There's a good plan. But Auterion has said it plans to upload it to the AI drone strike kits it is set to deliver to Ukraine by the end of the year. While the delivery would be one of the largest of its kind, the volume is still relatively small compared to the hundreds of thousands of drones already used by Ukrainian forces each month. Well, there you have it. But now they'll have swarm technology. There was an article about Zelensky out begging for more money. Where'd that go? Well, I can't find it. We're going to skip that. But Zelensky has been firing all kinds of generals lately. And he's blaming them for losses on the field. He's very distraught over this. Okay. Maria Zakharova gave a good one, too. I hope I get to that tonight. I think I will have to, because that was a good speech. Where is that? You know, maybe I'll come back to this one. Go back up to Zakharova. Detailed, blah, blah, blah. Who is this? Who are we talking about here? This is Alexei Arestovich. He came up with another good one, too. And nope, skip. We're going to skip that one. The front line is collapsing. This we know. I watched Judge Napolitano and Larry Johnson. That was kind of interesting. We'll get back to that. Russia is steamrolling Ukraine in North Donetsk direction in the Lyman sector. We'll get to that. Scott Ritter gave us another NATO preparing for war with Russia. That was interesting. Blah, blah, blah. Trump, Ursula calling Trump. Graham warns Hungary. I read those, but I don't want that one. Zelensky sacking generals, frontline collapse, huge Russian strike, Starmer plots, and Modi and Trump. But where is Miss Zakharova? Where did she go? Here she is. So, she had an interesting video, and Maria Zakharova is Lavrov's press secretary, and so every day, just about, she gives a two-hour session, question and answer period. But first, telling what, the news of the day is in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and so she made a comment on this one. And basically it was, listen, and this was a direct appeal to Ukrainians, and I found it rather interesting. She's going, look, she's funny anyway, and she's direct, and she is a good press secretary. And she goes, Zelensky is killing you with Western money. That's what he's doing. And she gave a blistering statement. And she aimed it at Ukrainians. I'm talking to you directly, basically. She says Kiev's emergency mobilization. They're having another mobilization. 120,000 recruits. And get this, they're targeting those that speak Russian. And she said this, first of all, is targeting. They're going after the Russian-speaking population in Ukraine who don't want to go fight Russians, right? And then she says, listen, these people in Ukraine are sacrificing their own people so the government can get Western cash. She says that $12 million in Ukraine has been allocated to catch all of the conscripts who've disappeared. There was another, she says they no longer, because remember, here's what Ukraine used to do when they were training new soldiers, till about 10 months ago. And they changed the law on it here about a month ago. And about 9-10 months ago, there's a big story. I think I told you a little bit about it, that an elite unit that trained in France, an entire brigade, some 5,000 soldiers, went to France to train. When they came back, there were only 3,200 left. A bunch of them ran away, and they left. And then they came back, and when they came back, Zelensky split them up, or the military did. They were pissed off that they half of them ran away, or a third of them ran away, really. But they're pissed off that these guys ran away. And it's not funny. It's horrifying. But at the same time, she's talking about that. Well, to fix that problem, here the Z-Man's a pretty smart guy, right? Well, we have this covered. No more Western training for you. And so now they can't get training because the Western people that come to Ukraine to train them are all getting killed. So nobody wants to come and train them either. So you got a huge problem. The Ukrainians, they have nobody to train any of the new recruits because everybody's dead. No, they won't send them to the West because half of them run away and disappear. And then they can't train them because anyway, it's just a mess. So here's Zakharova talking about it, and she says all of this money that the West is sending into Ukraine, here's 12 million of it sent to catch conscripts who've disappeared. There, she said. She accuses Zelensky of genocide on behalf of the West, killing his own people, and highlights a surge in desertions. Now, there are numbers out there that say that 500,000 soldiers have deserted the Ukrainian army. The Kiev Verkhovna Rada there has said. I forget her name, but one of the MPs there has said, oh, looks like we got us a phone call. Hold on one second. Hello, sir.
Hi. So, Sam, do you think Russia is trying to expand into Eastern Europe?
No. That is the biggest scam ever. And
so what's the fight about?
Which fight? The Ukraine fight?
Yeah, what's the fight about?
Well, that's a kind of a long story, but it started with the U.S. and the West, mainly the U.S., overthrowing a government that was elected inside of Ukraine because it wasn't pro-West enough, and it was neutral. It was claiming neutrality, and Yanukovych was the president at that time, and they didn't like the fact that he wasn't anti-Russia and trying to drag Ukraine west. And so there's something called the Maidan Uprising, where they had sponsored, U.S.-sponsored, West-sponsored, arguably Soros-sponsored, but definitely NGO-sponsored, definitely Victoria Nuland-sponsored, definitely all kinds of involvement from the U.S. side in that uprising in Maidan. And they slaughtered a whole bunch of people and installed a new government, which they recognized immediately and said, we recognize this as the correct government, not the Yanukovych one. We ran him off, and he was afraid of getting killed, so we ran him off to Russia. Then there was it's called the Profsoyuz uprising. There was another uprising within the next couple of months saying, look, we don't support this U.S. and Western-led nonsense that is going on, and we are fighting. And it was various areas. This one, I believe, the Profsoyuz was in Odessa, although certainly there were people getting killed all over the eastern half of Ukraine, which is literally 80% Russian anyway. And so, not Ukraine, well, they're all very common, but they were definitely Russian ethnicity east of the Dnieper River, right?
So I have a quick question.
Sure.
I have a question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Your knowledge is incredible, and I enjoy listening to how you describe that. What and why was the U.S. interest over there? I mean, was it to stop the spread of communism, or was it to the biolabs, or was it the rare earth minerals, or was it just the agricultural land? Why was the U.S. so determined to be involved in that area?
We've been doing it ever since the 90s. Well, actually longer than that. But if you start with the 90s, when I was involved in arms control and the wall collapsed. Why don't we start with the wall collapsing, okay? And with the Warsaw Pact no longer being necessary. Russia in horrible economic and political state. And the U.S. had the opportunity to befriend, I suppose you could call it that, the Russians, the Russian people, and bring everyone into NATO, or to get rid of this horror story of an existence that had been going on since the Second World War, right? That the opportunity was there. In fact, when I was in the military at that time, I remember thinking, well, this is actually a really good thing. You know, Russians aren't bad people. That, you know, we're very similar in the way we talk. Ukrainians too, by the way. Ukrainians, you know, don't take me saying that Russians aren't bad people to say that Ukrainians are bad people, because they're not. You know, everybody's got their share of good, bad, and different. But they're and you know what? They're just as big of victims as, you know, the Russian people. Their government sucks, you know, period. And it certainly isn't democratic. But your big question about why we keep doing this, it's always the same with us. It's always the same with the United States. We have to dominate. When you look at Ukraine right now, Ukraine, and it's gone way up under Zelensky, has been selling all of their land, all of their the biggest owner is like, what's that one called? BlackRock. They're selling all the grain. Ukraine was the primary, the biggest on the planet supplier of grains and foodstuffs definitely to Europe and everywhere else. And that is enormous money. And their manufacturing ability and the ports of Odessa, Sevastopol, and everywhere on the Black Sea. The U.S. wants in the Black Sea. Okay, the U.S. wants in that Black Sea. England, there's big stories going on about Trump in the last couple of days meeting with King Charles or whatever, and Charles trying to allegedly talk him into backing efforts to continue sanctions, back Ukraine, all of this. The story is that especially England has pumped hundreds of millions of dollars into Odessa specifically, right on the Black Sea. And I watched an interesting take on the history of all this. Couldn't have been a week ago. And it was by a person from the Ukrainian side talking about this. But it was a decent history. It wasn't incorrect. And he was talking about Sevastopol. And it wasn't that I didn't know, but I didn't remember. But Sevastopol has been a Russian port, also on the Black Sea, in Crimea. And so the Crimea thing that came up in 2014, this was all forced by Ukraine on the Crimea side when they blocked Russia and said they couldn't use the Sevastopol port anymore, when they had signed some kind of a lease arrangement to allow the Russian Navy to be in Sevastopol, where they had been for hundreds of years. So you kind of foresee these things. And then, man, there's so much to go into because the history is vast. And if you go back to when you remember, I don't know if you watched it or heard of it, but the Tucker Carlson interview of Vladimir Putin. Did you?
Sure.
Okay. Do you remember that? So when that came about, Putin spent the first literally 20 minutes talking about history. And a couple of the things that bothered him the most was that first Stalin gave away a chunk of Russian Ukraine to Ukraine. He changed the designation of it from Russia proper to part of Ukraine. And then when Khrushchev came to power in the 50s, he did the same thing, and he gave them the Donbass region and Crimea. And he expanded it even further. And basically, those two leaders nearly doubled the size of Ukraine. But the history was always Russian. And the percentage of people was always Russian. And Vladimir Putin was talking about this, and he's going, but we're brothers. We've been together in the Russian Orthodox Church and in all these other, our cultures are similar and in some ways identical, and there's no reason we can't get past this. And this is what he was saying to Tucker Carlson, but he had to explain the history, and then he's going, and Tucker kept cutting him off, you know what I mean, and trying to go, well, yeah, but I want to talk about, war, well, Putin's trying to explain, not that it's right, but that there's a different perspective, you see, but the biggest thing is NATO coming over. And first of all, you're selling out. You cannot deal with Russia anymore. You have to deal with the West and the westernization of a Slavic nation and trying to turn it Anglo-Saxon. And so there's plenty of things to it, but as a short brief, I'll give you that.
Well, yeah, that makes perfect sense. It's like, say Mexico tries to come in and take over Texas or something. It's like, hey, listen, we talked about this and everyone was okay with this at the time. And now you guys are wanting to change the rules all of a sudden. And so my question really more than anything, and I think I know the answer. I'm just wondering if we get to it in a roundabout way. There is a certain group of people on this earth that think they should be in charge of everything.
Oh, they exist for sure.
Oh, of course. So my underlying, question or thought is this: that why don't the majority of the people in this world, and I know the answer, it's because of propaganda and brainwashing and dis and miss and uninformation. I get that, but so what best? I know you're doing it, Sam, and I appreciate you for it, and I know JR is. But how do we get the word out? By and large, how do we get the word out that there is a small 0.1% that think they should eradicate this earth and make it only theirs? How do we expose that cabal? And then when we do expose it, what do we do with them? How do we treat them? How do we handle that situation?
Do you want me to tell you the scary part?
Yeah, I want to hear.
I'll tell you the very scary part. We don't have to. They have lost. It doesn't matter. Because one key thing you said, the majority of the world and this 1% that wants to run it. I don't know if you've been listening to the whole show, but when I started tonight, I had said something about the fact that the speaking and the offering of cultural exchange between countries shouldn't depend upon the fact that you don't like one particular thing they're doing, pointing specifically at Russia going into Ukraine, means you shouldn't invite them to the Olympics. They can't participate in music events or sports or anything like that, right? But the fact is, everything that I've been talking about since I started this show about a year ago, and the reason I got jazzed up about it was something called BRICS. And Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. And now they have some 20-something permanent members and partners, and then another set of companion countries that takes them up to about 34. 38 showed up to that place that I went last year. And so the scary part of what you were saying is, frankly, it doesn't matter, because 1.5 billion Indians, 1.3 billion Chinese people, Russia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Iran, and all of the Southeast Asia are so much larger than us. And their economies are growing at a pace that are so much larger than us that it truthfully doesn't matter. The days of one country rule and hegemony, one country, one thought process, one theory, those are gone. And all that America has to do, the easy answer is accept who we are, protect our own nationality, and guess what? Cooperate with the rest of the world instead of trying to colonialize it. These are my theories and thoughts on that matter, and I believe, without question, that I am absolutely correct in this thought process. Now, I also believe that there has been a group of people, this 1% that you were talking about, that have been trying desperately to maintain the grip and the control that they've had before. And this guy named Donald Trump is preventing that. But he's not alone. There might not be a corresponding group of Putin, Trump, Xi Jinping, and Narendra Modi, but the group of three, Russia, India, China, is certainly one. And the best thing that Trump could do would be to join them and say...
I totally agree with what you just said, brother.
Well,
so
I'm not an idiot, and I'm pretty analytical and strategic when it comes to that, and it's like a clear picture to me. And
why would you fight with the biggest, your biggest possible adversary? Why not join hands, whatever? I'm not saying sing Kumbaya. I think there's reasons to be socially and nationalistically and whatnot different. I think that we need to maintain our identity. I don't want to be you, Sam. I mean, as much as I think you're a neat guy, and I damn sure know you don't want to be me. So we have to maintain physical identity.
Yeah.
And yet be able to converse like this and talk about things and not worry about some lunatic, furry, trans, freaking drugged up, Pfizer drugged up, big pharma thing being unleashed against us.
Well, it has been unleashed against us for at least 30 years, and I've said this. I even said it like 20 minutes ago that it's pretty sad when my bastion of hope isn't coming from the country leaders that I would pray would be the ones to teach these principles to my children and to me, and to honor the things that I grew up with and that my parents believed and taught me and all of that. Instead, I'm hearing it from people like Modi in India. I'm hearing it from Xi Jinping, for God's sake, and from Vladimir Putin, who are supposed to be the bad guys, right? And it's nonsense.
And a lot of the more I'm not going to say right wing. I'm going to say just I'm going to say mainstream. I'm going to kick the ABCs, the NBCs, and the CBSs and all them out.
Yep.
They're a propaganda outlet. They're captured by the Mockingbird media. It's all U.S. It's all a big global cabal thing, primarily centered in the United States of America. And the reason is we had it so good for so long that we allowed ourselves to be lulled to sleep. And they planned it. Those devil satanic worshipers planned this whole thing, is to lull this big giant to sleep and then come in and slit its throat while it's, in its slumber. And now what they've done recently, these one percenters and these New World Order, these exterminists that are out there, these trans, Vestite, transhumanist death cult, they're fully exposed now. So like you said earlier, all those Indonesians and all those the Chinese, the word is out there now. There is a great giant awakening happening right now, and we get to see it all, Sam. We get to see it all.
Well, I'm watching it, and I want to be there on the ground floor. People ask me sometimes why I like to travel, and my Belarus and Lithuania trip a couple of weeks ago were countries number 56 and 57 for me. And in America, when you go travel, you get two sort of things. But it's very rare that people are extremely excited for you. Most of the time it's like, oh, aren't you afraid? No, I'm not. And in fact, it's been extremely rare that I've been afraid in another country. And what I've always thought is it gives you a different perspective, and maybe it's why I'm as, I don't know what, weird, I accept certain things in a certain way or whatever. I don't know. But I have a strong distrust of being told something when I have personally seen the opposite. Or lived it. And lived it and seen it. And I was very young when I got the opportunity to travel as part of a very high level as an interpreter for them. And it was very high level stuff. And that is something, that I worked my butt off to get, and I deserved to get it. But I don't know that I appreciated it then as much as I should have, And I don't, but now I certainly do, and I always had a strong desire to travel, but really to see other things and to see other histories and how people lived and or live and our history in America. We have a history, but not like in those other places.
I've got a funny story for you. I know you're coming up on the end of your show.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be brief. So in the U.S., there's this three-letter agency called the IRS, and then there's another three-letter agency called Department of Homeland Security, DHS. So this is a funny story. So the DHS in the last few years let in millions of people, right? I mean, just over the last administration. And then the IRS, they say that I owe them a certain amount of money. And you know what they have done? They have restricted they won't let me get a passport because they say I owe them a certain amount of money. So the ironic thing is the IRS is keeping me in and the DHS is letting everyone else in. So somebody that might want to go somewhere else can't go, but those that want to come and flood this, it's a mixed up, messed up, jumbled up,
mixed
world.
Up, muddled up, shook up world.
Shook up world.
Except for Lola. And
the Lola was a fucking tranny too, man.
That's true. That is true. And I love that song. And I like the Kinks. That was some good stuff. LOLA. Okay.
It's fun to talk with you. I'll look forward to listening to you, next time.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate your call. You have a good evening.
You too. Bye.
And there he goes. Well, that was an interesting sideline. Thank you very much for that call. And I was talking about Maria Zakharova. And, having someone quiz me as to what I believe, I think actually was a pretty good, maybe I've not explained that before, that my thought process, people ask me and I'm not as positive as I ought to be. And there are several reasons for it, quite a few reasons for that. And but it's like I just got done telling the caller, I don't think that my positivity or someone else's negativity really make any sort of difference because, like it or not, the world is changing. And wasn't it Ferris Bueller who said something like that? And you gotta keep up. What did he say? The world moves pretty fast, and in order to stay ahead, you gotta keep running to keep up. And in all seriousness, I truly hope that people understand where I'm coming from. I'm not anti-America. I'm not. I don't believe that we need to collapse or that we're going to, nothing like that. But I also believe it's coming. And I believe that if we change our focus, instead of domination and colonialism and inserting American huge corporate money into Ukraine, helping Ukraine develop something without taking ownership of everything that they have, which is what we've been doing in country after country after country for years. And there's no denying it. There is no denying it. You open up Iraq, and then what's Iraq full of immediately? American contractors, any projects put on by the government, built by the government, you move on to the next country, do it again. And it's always an endless cycle. And so that is where the big money comes and goes, and the government budget keeps going up. And what do we do to protect it? Another military base. Why do we have military bases all over? To warn off the locals. And you don't have to agree with that. You can disagree with me, but they aren't looking out for our interests. They're looking out for their own buddies, financial interests and building projects that American rich people that all sleep in the same litter box, or well, they don't sleep in litter boxes, I guess they sleep in the other. Anyway, I gotta end this show because we are bumping up against the final. And my name is Samuel Trapp. This has been, and always is, International Flavor. This is the last show of the week for me. I will be back on Sunday with a deep dive experience. If you get an opportunity, go out to internationalflavor.com. Check it out. You can see all my prior shows there, neatly arranged for your listening pleasure. You can also listen to me on damradio.com/live. Every night, Sunday through Thursday, 9 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. Chicago time from the Lake Ozark Real Estate of the Art studio. I'm Samuel Trapp. Have